No refrigerator, no supermarket, no drive-through. And yet, the people of ancient Israel ate one of the most intentional, carefully governed diets in all of human history. So what was actually on the table? The answer is in your Bible, and it's more fascinating than most people realize. Most people picture ancient Israel as dry, dusty, barely surviving. But God himself described the Promised Land as, quote, a land flowing with milk and honey. That wasn't poetry, that was a food report. So let's break it down, starting with 7 specific foods God used to describe the land itself. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 8, God lists 7 crops, what biblical scholars call the 7 species: wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and honey, meaning date honey, the thick syrup pressed from dates, not bees. These weren't just crops. They were the entire foundation of the Israelite diet. Every meal was a daily reminder of God's provision. The backbone of every meal was bread, flatbread, baked directly on a heated stone. Barley was the grain of the poor, wheat was a luxury. Olive oil was their butter, used for cooking, for lamps, and poured over offerings to God. Add lentils, chickpeas, and onions, and that was the daily meal for most Israelites every single day. In Numbers chapter 11, the Israelites in the wilderness were actually weeping because they missed the cucumbers, melons, leeks, and garlic they had back in Egypt. They had just crossed the Red Sea on dry ground, and they were upset about cucumbers. Now, meat. For most Israelite families, eating meat meant something significant was happening. A feast day, a sacrifice, an honored guest. Everyday meals were meatless. The most common meats were lamb and goat. In Leviticus chapter 11, God gave Israel a detailed dietary law. Land animals had to have split hooves and chew their cud. Cattle, sheep, goats, clean. Pigs, camels, rabbits, forbidden. For seafood, fins and scales, tilapia was fine. Shellfish, catfish, eel, completely off the table. Every meal 3 times a day reminded Israel, you are a people set apart. But here's where it gets really interesting. Some of the most pivotal moments in the entire Old Testament turned on what someone chose to eat. Genesis chapter 25. Esau comes in from hunting, starving and exhausted. His brother Jacob is cooking. Esau smells the stew and says, "Give me some of that red stuff, I'm about to die." Jacob answers, "Sell me your birthright first." Esau agreed on the spot. He traded his entire inheritance, all the rights and blessings of the firstborn son, for a bowl of red lentil stew. Peasant food, and he gave everything for it. Then there's Daniel. Taken captive to Babylon, the king offered him food from the royal table, meats and wines that violated the Mosaic dietary laws. Daniel refused. He asked for vegetables and water for 10 days. At the end of those 10 days, Daniel and his friends were healthier than every other man in the palace. A king's feast, beaten by obedience. And then the Passover, described in Exodus chapter 12 in extraordinary detail. A roasted lamb, not a single bone broken. Unleavened bread, made in haste, no time to let it rise. Bitter herbs on the plate to taste the bitterness of slavery. Every ingredient carried meaning. Every bite was an act of faith and remembrance. The diet of ancient Israel was never just about nutrition. What they ate, what they refused, how they prepared it, who they shared it with, all of it was woven into their identity as a people called by God. And thousands of years later, those same elements, bread, wine, a lamb without broken bones, bitter herbs, would appear again at the most significant meal in history. But that's a story for another video. If this gave you a new way of reading the Old Testament, hit subscribe, because we're just getting started. And next time you sit down to eat, remember, for Israel, every single meal was a conversation with God.